Hey, what's up, nerds? I've got something I wanted to go a little bit more in depth on that I've mentioned in previous videos, and I think it's worth its own video. That is the value of free guild archers, the guys who are apparently good now for some strange reasons. So let's take a quick look at the War Scroll. Their stats, unimpressive, 5-inch move, 6-up save. Um, Bows 18 inches, 4s and 4s, 5 to hit, 4 to wound in close combat. Really not that exciting. The important ability that they have here is the Huntsman. After setup is complete, you can make a bonus move with this unit as if it were moving in the movement phase. So that means before a whole lot of other stuff happens, these guys get to move up the battlefield. So, what is this useful for? Well, there's a whole lot of deep strike sort of abilities, or abilities that your opponent is getting to set things up or move things into the middle of the battlefield very early in the game. So Stormcast Eternals have their deep strike abilities. Seraphon can teleport. Various different factions, especially Death, can summon things. Sail the Faithless is still going to be teleporting his slaves to darkness around. And a really big one is that this zones off against Sylvaneth to prevent them from dropping Wildwoods down. And barring any of those things, if you happen to not be facing any armies that do any of those shenanigans, they're still charge bait, and they, can do a little bit of shooting, can get some stuff done. But I just wanted to do a little visual representation for you guys so that you see really what I'm talking about on how much these guys really deny the deep strike. So this is what it looks like with just one unit of archers moving up their 5 inches at the beginning of the game. Now, they also can run, so they can go up even further than that potentially. They can move up to 11 inches right at the start of the battle. And most of those abilities that you see require your setup to be more than 9 inches away from an enemy unit. So those little brown areas that I have zoned off there, that is the denial area that's being created by one 100-point unit that gets to make a move during the setup phase. You have a pretty big chunk of the battlefield that is zoned off and is going to be preventing your opponent from doing deep strikes, doing all sorts of shenanigans, preventing Sylvaneth Wildwoods from going up, although I think the Wildwoods have a smaller radius, maybe 3 inches from something, but still they're making it more difficult for your opponent to get in there with the Wildwoods and place them where they want to. Various abilities that are out there that are very dangerous for movement shenanigans. These guys really put a hamper on what your opponent wants to do just by having one unit, a 100-point unit of archers. And this is potentially, I'm not going to say this is something that's going to break the meta, but this is something that if all of those abilities are really popular in the metagame, it means free people have a pretty decent counter to their mojo. And just as a further example, here's what it looks like if you have two. Your opponent basically can't deploy anywhere on your side of the battlefield, at all. You're totally zoning it off and even pushing into their side of the battlefield, not being able to use their deep strike abilities. So this is really denying them the ability to use any of those sorts of abilities on first turn to drop a unit on top of an objective, for example. They're going to be really tightly restricted from doing that, and this is going to give you the ability to get your slower moving units to move up and take on those objectives, and even just the archers themselves can jump on the objectives early in the game, or really even before the game actually begins, and take control of objectives depending on the scenario. This is, of course, with the standard deployment. I know 2 of the new scenarios don't use standard horizontal deployment like this. Actually, 3 of them don't. So, this is just sort of a, ad hoc sort of example, but yeah, I think this is really interesting, and I expect to see more archers on the battlefield running a defensive sort of role. If you fan these guys out, they can just do a tremendous amount of area denial for those instances when you have opponents that are, pulling some kind of crazy teleporty, deep strikey shenanigans, which an ever increasing number of armies can pull. And even for those armies that are maybe just fast moving, these guys are a little speed bump and take some of the heat off of your front lines on that first turn. So that's all I got for now. I just thought this was interesting, and I wanted to do a little bit more of an in-depth video on this for you guys. I'm definitely going to be experimenting around with this. Depending on what we see in the metagame, this really might be a highly effective tool for area denial for some of the crazy abilities that your opponents are going to be able to use with all of these new Allegiance abilities. So that's it for now, folks. I'll talk to you all later.